This session is a 10-minute presentation from Glasgow, followed by 10 minutes Q&A. And I believe we have Marguerite somewhere.
Good afternoon from Dublin. Esther is just being unmuted as well, I think.
Yes, you are.
Share the screen. So
there we go.
Okay, there we go. Share screen. Oh, it's going to do that. Okay. I'm so used to using MS Teams for work that. Oh gosh, look at that horrible mess that we have here. Okay. So let's just go from the current slide. Okay, apologies that I seem to have sort of pinned all sorts of things. Some of them will disappear. So, hi everybody. Happy festive season. This is the presentation for Glasgow 2024. And first of all, we're super excited to unveil our new logo with a fantastic little Father Christmas. So a bit of a secret, when I asked Sarah to do the presentation, to redo the logo for us, she said, whatever I do, please don't make me do lots of reindeer. So we've got a little jet-powered Santa for you. Okay, so welcome to Glasgow 2024. Our dates are still the 8th to the 12th of August 2024. And I'm aware some of you may have seen this presentation before, but this is our fantastic venue. And over on the right-hand side there, for those of you who've been to Glasgow before, you'll see there's been a little bit of a change. There's a huge UFO that has landed in our on what's now known as the SEC campus. This is actually a gigantic music venue. It does have some breakout rooms that we may use, but actually the convention centre is behind the auditorium, which you can see on the left-hand side. Those twinkling lights at the back, that is the auditorium.
So in addition to the new UFO, we have slightly more practically additional hotels on site as well. We now have 7 hotels with which we've started talking very, very nebulously. Those of you who were in Glasgow for 2005 will remember the Crown Plaza, which is attached to the venue and will be our party space and fan bar, and also the Campanile, which is an independent hotel. But in addition to that, over the intervening years, there has been the Hilton Garden Inn, a Premier Inn, Radisson, the Red Range, and 2 newly opened, as in within the last couple of weeks, I think, the construction has completed on the Moxie by Marriott and the Courtyard by Marriott. There is also a Radisson Blue being constructed across the River Clyde, which will be done by the time 2024 rolls around.
So Marguerite, you know what we didn't do? Do you know what we forgot?
Let me introduce ourselves, perhaps. Could we say hi? Pretend people don't know who we are, for everybody who doesn't know who we are.
Sorry. During the rehearsal, we forgot both times, so at least we're on track.
Consistent.
We're consistent. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so my name is Esther MacCallum-Stewart and I am the bid chair.
And I'm Marguerite Smith and I'm the vice chair.
So onwards.
Yep, so to continue with our hotels, this is the view from the Radisson Red. You can see the Frank Quitely comic art, which decorates every single bedroom, and the expansive, flat, accessible fan bar space at the top of the Radisson. But out those windows, you can also see how close it is to the Hydro, the Armadillo, and the SEC.
Yeah, and I just did a quick Google search and measured it. It's about 170, 150 meters. You can see the Hydro is quite curved. So if you are actually moving there and need to move slowly, or perhaps have access requirements, you have to just go in a bit of a loop. So in a straight line, it's 150 meters. But if you are actually using the low pavements, then it's 170. Okay, so a little bit about the SEC during the last year. We're incredibly proud of the venue. They have become an emergency Nightingale hospital. Most of the venue was converted, and if anybody wants to see any of the videos of that, I have a couple. And it was named after Louisa Jordan, who was a nurse in the First World War. And she served in Serbia, which is a little bit close to my heart because I'm wondering if she served with Flora Sandys, who again I can talk a lot about. My past research was into the First World War. But the thing that's really interesting about this is that it also means that we know that the venue are very aware of restrictions. They have converted their venue to be as socially distanced as possible. And one of the really interesting things that we noticed in one of the videos is that they actually are talking about the fact they've had to change the ventilation inside. And I'm really hoping that's permanent because as an asthmatic and anybody else who knows about this, big dusty convention halls are always going to be big dusty convention halls, and so having to change that, I really hope they keep that. That would be absolutely wonderful. But we've been in conversation with them all the way through this period, and we're also really proud of the fact that during this period they've just announced that they're going to become a mass vaccination centre. So good luck to the SEC. So onto our bid committee. You may notice some familiar names and some unfamiliar names. Right from the start, we've been trying as much as possible to recruit both within the local community, to recruit more widely. We're happy to talk about this in a bit. And also to kind of bring in people with a lot of experience. And we're at a really lucky position at the moment that our team is formed and we can also start to bring new voices up, and we're really kind of working on that at the moment. So yes, you'll see some slightly longer in the tooth people, but also certainly some Scottish names in there as well.
So one of the outcomes of having new people and less, well, experienced in different ways, different fandoms, different conventions, is that we get ideas for different kinds of events and different wonderful things to share with you and with the community. So what we have here is a new piece of art released over the summer from Ian Clark, the shipbuilding over the Clyde. What would our venue have looked like if we had become a spacefaring civilization, or maybe once we do become a spacefaring civilization? We've also been reaching out to a lot of the local organizations. We've got local authors, local publishers, local academic groups that we're working with to try to make sure that we are truly bringing Worldcon to Glasgow, and we are building up Glasgow so that they become part of Worldcon before we even get started.
And these are all events that we've held online in the last year, which means we've really started to learn about what might happen if there is a pivot. And going forwards, we're working with the University of Glasgow. Now, I always fall over this, the Centre for the Fantasy and the Fantastic. So there's a new department that's opened there that is completely about fantasy media, very much kind of the whole thing. And we're going to be working with them in the year ahead. We're hoping to do a series of online talks that specifically look at voices that might not necessarily be as recognised as they often are. So people of colour within the local community, and also queer voices of all different types within the local community as well. And I'm really excited about that, despite the vast amount of university paperwork that it's taken to get to this point. But yeah. Okay, so here's our fantastic supporter level at the moment. We have 65 super friends. They are indeed very super. We have 156 adult friends, and we have 487 pre-supporters. It's just under 500, isn't it, Marguerite?
I think we're not very far off 500 at all. I think, you know, it'd be easy to get 13 in a day if people were interested, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
Operators are standing by.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, there are. So we'd absolutely love to make that number 500 by the end of the month. So yes, support early, support as often as you wish.
Yeah. And this is, of course, how you can then do this. We would love to have your support at any level, in any fashion, you know, monetary, volunteer, information, advice, you name it, we will gladly make use of it. You can go to our website at glasgow2024.org/pre-support. And I'm not going to read every last detail of what's here, but these are our pre-support levels. So you've got your general pre-support, and then our friend levels: adult friend, young adult friend, and super friend, which grant slightly more benefit than the pre-support.
Yeah, and for those people who, well, for those people who love statistics, and also a little bit more detail is available on the website, but also you can see we've started to work out what our breakdown is so far. So head on over there. And should you wish, if perhaps you don't want to pre-support, maybe you want to volunteer instead. We'd love to hear from you. We've had some amazing suggestions so far. My list is growing ever longer, but here's just how you can contact us. And again, some more of Ian's absolutely fantastic art. So yeah. Anything else you want to say, Marguerite? Have I forgotten anything? Did we miss anything?
So we managed our names. That was good. Eventually, we've got the venue, we've got the new hotels, we've got the rates. We're in Glasgow in Scotland, which is currently in the UK. We'll see. Yeah, I think that's everything. So I think a big thank you to everybody for being here and for supporting us.
I have a specific question for Glasgow. Randy, do you want to handle that?
If I can find it on the sheet. Oh, here we go. How many party suites will be available in your main hotel, the Crown Plaza?
Okay, so the Crown Plaza, for those of you who've attended before, used to be the Moat House. So it has three. What we're going to do is we're going to flip program rooms in a very similar way to the way that we did with Dublin 2019. So the fan bar will be there, and shooting off from those, we have three large rooms downstairs, and then we have some slightly larger breakout rooms upstairs. Again, for those of you who don't know, party suites in hotels are not something that hotels come with as standard. One thing that we haven't had a chance to do is ask whether or not the Marriott hotels may have some, because they're a chain that is really unfamiliar with the UK. This is the first time that we know of that there are Marriott hotels. So we will need to speak to them and see if they have any. Otherwise, the Crown Plaza will be our central party area.
And Esther, just as a warning, I let the other presenters off earlier because they're newer, but I will be expecting a joke from you sometime before the end of the presentation.
Okay. Oh, I loved the tenants one. Now I have to think of another one. Okay.
Right.
We were having
anyway,
a good
we'll go to
jokes
some
discussion
questions here
earlier. You might draw on those. Yeah.
There was a question put in the chat about visas needed. And as I understand the current situation, which could change, of course, between now and 2024, a visa will not necessarily be required unless it is already required to travel to the UK. So if you don't need one at the moment, you won't need one in the future. That said, we don't know, because if anybody read the news today, talks broke down yesterday again.
Yeah, nothing new there. I think for the answer, Marguerite, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
All right, then I'm going to ask the WSFS question.
I was going to ask visas, which is, we don't actually expect a huge amount of change from what currently exists. Yes, the Brexit discussions are completely up in the air. In some ways, things have sort of been horribly protracted over this year. Given some of the issues around visas, we will certainly be allocating somebody to deal directly with this. And we know one of the issues previously was also an outreach issue, that some people weren't able to get visas, and then there was an issue at the last minute with Dublin, with an embassy being closed. So we're going to allocate somebody to do that. And we'll also think really carefully about who we need to be reaching out to in advance. I think this also applies to the Hugo's question, because if we're going to include finalists, then we need to be thinking about that internationally. So yeah, legally, as far as we're aware, not a huge amount of change despite a lot of the politics. Practically, in terms of the convention, something that we need to be really aware of and on the ball about, and have somebody who is really carefully thinking about this and is making steps to address it. So yeah.
Okay. There's been a question for previous, and it counts for you as well, and that is how you hope to include all Hugo nominees in the process of programming, etc., and making sure that they're not sort of like dangling out there.
Okay, let me get my notes. So the first thing to say about this is that it's not just one division's responsibility, and I think Kathy answered this really well actually when she started talking about it, is that there's often an assumption that it's just about putting finalists on program. but actually finalists are artists, they're performers. Like, one of the beauty of the Hugos is it's hugely varied. Like, what if the video game one goes through? Like, I mean, I'm a professor of video games, so this is so exciting. How do we do that? How are we going to get people to make and create games? So first of all, it's a cross-divisional thing that we need to think about in terms of our infrastructure. And that also, again, means communicating between the different groups, again, and not just leaving it to program. So that's the kind of con runner answer. The outreach answer is that I think one of the issues that we've had in the past is that there will be a group named, and that group might compose of 5 people, but then one person is approached and doesn't necessarily understand perhaps what a Hugo is, or what it is they need to do. And I actually have an experience of this first hand with somebody who was nominated for a podcast about 3 or 4 years ago, and they just didn't know what it was. So again, making sure that the communication that we have with finalists who might not necessarily know what the Hugos are, that they can be involved and should be, is really important. And the third thing, again, is access. What kind of access do they need? How might they attend? And what does that mean? What are the implications of that? Do we have an outreach fund, perhaps? And how do we think about the economic ramifications of that? And that's not a question that I'm going to answer now, because I think it's a really complicated question and it needs a lot of thinking about. And I'm a chair, but I've got a team for a reason. So.
Okay. Now, back to the question sheet before I lose track.
Kind of from the all question sheet, how's Glasgow on the fair and equal treatment of people in the LGBTQ plus community and their safety in the community?
So I'm hoping she's on this side. She's not that side.
I'm not on my screen. I'm on the other side. So I'm waiting for somebody else to jump in. No, so Glasgow is a very open city, a very welcoming city. It is actually possibly the most diverse place in Scotland altogether. So there is an entire Pride Month with 31 separate celebrations across the month. And I'm not going to say things are perfect, but it's welcome, and it's someplace where basic safety is guaranteed, basic rights are guaranteed, and that's where we're trying to support the local LGBTQI community as well, and make sure that they're involved, their voices are heard, the local organizations are people that we're talking to make sure that we're representing them safely and correctly as well.
And this is also one of the reasons that we wanted to start working with Glasgow University. The whole remit of those sessions, which again I'm hoping start to happen next year, are about including local members of the community who are LGBTQ+, and okay. That's really important.
Can I interrupt you slightly, because we have one last question that is intended for 23 and 24 bids. And that's about crowd management. Have you considered crowd management and how you will ensure that people can get into programming?
Yeah. So obviously we mentioned the fact that the SEC have actually had an opportunity to kind of be a little bit put on the spot by social distancing, I think. So we know that in the Crowne Plaza and between the Crowne Plaza and the main venue, there is a pinch point. There is an indoor area. Our current, which has got a pinch point in the middle of it. What our current plan at the moment is to actually have a covered walkway outside. When I say covered walkway, it also means it's only about 30 meters long. It's not a huge outdoor area, but in the past, we know people haven't wanted to use that area. I think also when we go back to the NEC, oh, that's in Birmingham, when we go back to the SEC and speak to them about this again, they're going to be so much more aware of it than even having had 2 Worldcons there than we thought before, because we know they've had to put one-way systems in, for example. We know that they've had to make sure that all the alleyways are distanced enough so that people can move. And this is people building things as well. So they're moving big, hefty stuff around. So yes, it is something that we've already discussed with them, but I think if it's a terrible thing to say that the last year has had any benefit at all, because it's been such a dark time for a lot of us. But I think that's going to be something the SEC are going to be very, very keenly aware of.
We actually have one last question, and I'm going to take it despite the fact we're currently out of your time. So try and keep it short, ladies. The person has said that they feel that the UK has a vicious strain of anti-trans culture. I haven't noticed it myself, but I live in Slough, and Slough has so many different people from so many different places. I don't think they have any clue what's happening. And they ask, how is Glasgow in terms of trans people?
So I don't want to make a specific example of people that are on our staff. So I'm not going to speak to that, because I think it's not
your place.
Something for them to speak on. However, it is something that we are extremely aware of and are very much a part of as well. The trans community in Glasgow is a group that we've already reached out to and have spoken with. I think Chris's point is good. Yes, there is a sort of there are anti-trans issues in the UK. As somebody who teaches a lot of young people and students, I can see that really changing as I'm looking at people, and I think that's really positive. But I also think that we need to think about that very carefully. So Glasgow in particular is very positive. It's a major city, so yeah.
Yeah.
And the other, just to add very briefly, the city itself is more positive than the UK as a whole. Obviously, Bell versus Tavistock just happened, and those of you who know what that is, it was a medication case. But Glasgow, the bid, is explicitly trans positive, trans accepting, trans. We've made the statement about trans.
I'd like to thank both of you very much. We're 2 minutes past our time.
I started sending me links, like my WhatsApp is going off with pro translate.
Just so everybody knows, our next session is going to be at 10 minutes past the hour, and it will be Chengdu and Memphis, and Randy and I will be quoting lines because the bids have requested transcription of the questions that are asked, just so you know that that's going to happen. Everybody have a nice break. You've got 7 minutes.
Somebody did put a joke in for you, Esther, if you want to use
I know,
that one,
Eddie put one in as well. I had a couple, but Ed's jokes are so much better than mine. So, and it's a terrible joke. Go and look at that one. Thank you, Ed.
No, thank you.
Thank
you, everybody.
You would need.